is exposed, what is it creating? Well, on the one hand, if all these celebrities are doing it for the common good of man, then this is a good thing. More people need to realize that there's a problem with pedophilia in this country, in our institutions. But in the same way God uses all situations for good, I think the enemy uses all situations for bad. And the exposing of pedogate and the pedophiles in our governments, in our institutions, might be the beginning of a larger enslavement program as part of this fourth industrial revolution, as part of this rebuilding infrastructure, as part of making America great again. Let me explain myself a little bit. Problem, reaction, solution. They used it in 9/11. They had the problem, which was 9/11, the terrorists. They had the reaction, we need to do something about it. And the solution, which is giving up more and more of our privacy in exchange for security. Thank you, government, for looking over us, right? Well, in the same way, this pedo problem really does accelerate this fourth industrial revolution in this way. The problem: elite pedophiles run almost everything. Guys like John Podesta running around doing weird things. And there are some researchers here who all they say is John Podesta needs to be in jail. I agree 100%. I think a lot of people need to be in jail. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Huma Abedin, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. The list goes on and on and on. But once they're in jail, or if they even get to jail, so what? What then? Have we eradicated the problem? No, we haven't. So the problem of the elite pedophile ring will continue even if John Podesta goes to jail. The reaction? Citizen outrage. The more people realize this, the more people are going to speak up against it. Independent journalists, reporters have dedicated their time and energy to exposing pedogate, which is a good thing. Solution though. What is the solution? Now, at a very basic level, the solution is more awareness so that you don't put your children in jeopardy. But we know that governments and institutions always like to step in with their solution. Now, let me give you some excerpts here from the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. This is from 8.7, where it says, take immediate and effective measures to eradicate forced labor, end modern slavery and human trafficking, and secure the prohibition and elimination of the worst forms of child labor, including recruitment and use of child soldiers, and by 2025, end child labor in all its forms. So one of the plans of the agenda is to eliminate child trafficking. Interesting that the United Nations wants to be involved in this. This point is reiterated on 16.2, end abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and all forms of violence against and torture of children. But this is the kicker here. You keep going down. 16.8, broaden and strengthen the participation of developing countries in the institutions of global governance. 16.9, by the year 2030, provide legal identity for all, including birth registration. Legal identity for all. We just had one company start to actually make RFID implantable chips available for their employees. But digging more into this particular line item, they want to have everybody on a database by the year 2030. And Pedogate is a great way to get a lot of people to say, okay, you know what? I want my child to be accounted for. Let's put him or her in the system. Now, will that lead to microchipping children? I don't know. I don't think most people are going to accept that in the next 10 years. But with 5G technology, it is astronomically invasive in terms of the Internet of Things, everything connecting to the internet, but also us being trackable, identifiable, etc. Our privacy is gone. And again, I titled this video, Trump's New World Order, because Donald Trump, as much as I've been trying to root for the guy, was totally behind getting drones and 5G technology out into the masses. Watch this clip here.
So this fully autonomous drone works on behalf of John and the team at Construction. So John, if you want to say a little bit more to the president about how you've seen that experience been?
We have to go out in the field and survey. 25 years ago, we didn't even know what a cell phone was. 2 weeks of data collection. We look today and we can actually, just our life has kind of evolved around the technology. It's life-changing. This drone is life-changing. We're finding out daily, not in the quarry side of things, but in the construction side of things, and other uses. We've actually started 2 other businesses up off the same drone, just using it in a different way. So it's
and yet right now drones are becoming very powerful too. I see where they're lifting people. I don't know about the level of safety there, but I see that. But also, I guess they're going to be lifting very heavy material at some point.
Yeah, there's an initiative with other companies underway to effectively have delivery being done by drone. This drone in particular is about just being able to collect aerial intelligence in a seamless way and being able to deliver that to the user in a way that they weren't able to accomplish before. So John's able to get that work done in literally minutes after the drone flies, versus usually it would take him days of just manual labor to be able to accomplish that same work.
Fantastic job.
thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
Randall?
Yes, Mr. President, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about 5G technology in about 2 minutes, okay? Guys like Jeff Immelt, various Internet of Things, drones, autonomous cars are going to require a whole different level of speed and wireless networks. If you come over here, this is a residential neighborhood. If you want to get the kind of speeds required today, these lights are fiber. We have to take fiber to every one of these houses to get that kind of bandwidth. What 5G does, says forget about all that fiber out here. Get fiber to this, the small cell, which Marcel is going to show you here. This small cell will broadcast this kind of bandwidth to all these homes, okay? You no longer need to run fiber in here. So you can have speeds that are multiples of what the fastest cable technology can deliver today into the home with wireless technology. If you move into the city, what's happening? If you want to get that bandwidth in there, the same thing. Fiber run to every one of these buildings. It takes a long time digging up roads, bridges, and sidewalks and so forth. 5G says no longer. In fact, all you need are small cells inside the city, and we can light up these buildings here as well, right? And then as you move to Wi-Fi, we have Wi-Fi deployed in these buildings all over the place, so customers moving in and out of the Wi-Fi arrangement. You can see the old big cell technology sitting on top of buildings, broadcasting throughout the city. But down the street level, the customer is being put on whatever network gives them the fastest speeds. This could be an autonomous car, it could be any number of things. And so as the car moves, it gets moved back and forth between the networks into another 5G deployment, and you're getting these kind of multiple gigabit speeds throughout cities without all the fiber having to be deployed into all these buildings. It really accelerates it, makes us get to the market much faster.
So 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you couldn't have even imagined
Wouldn't have
this.
thought about it. No, sir, we would not have. And this is 2018, we'll deploy in this kind of configuration, and the companies in here are, and in 2020, it becomes mobile. And so this handset will be getting these speeds.
So there has to be a tremendous construction saving too, ultimately.
It's a huge construction saving. You don't have to deploy all this fiber. You see this little cell site here. You're going from deploying these big cell sites and towers to deploying these all over cities. That's what Marcelo is going to show you, what this technology looks like now.
So, Mr. President, if I can summarize 5G, is $275 billion of investment in the next 7 years, the creation of 3 million new jobs, and a contribution of $500 billion to the GDP of the United States. What is different between 4G and 5G? 4G, those were enormous towers that look quite ugly. We're going to move to deploy millions of this, hundreds of thousands and then millions of small cells all over the United States. The problem that we have is it takes us 1 year to get a city to give us a permit, but it takes us 1 hour to install them. And unless we can install them real fast, we're going to lose that leadership that we have today. Those huge towers, all it is now, it's just a small cell. You put this on the utility poles, you put it in the cable strands, and that's all we need in order to enable. So when people ask about 5G,
But they're mostly local permits you need?
basically we run into trouble with cities, municipalities, counties. Each one has its own idea of how much they should charge, how long should it take.
How much is a federal permit? How long does that take?
Well, this mainly would go down to the cities. We're working quite well with the FCC.
Individual problems with certain cities.
There's some cities that takes 30 days, there's some cities that takes 2 years, so it's impossible to do. So this is why we need to fix this. And that's what 5G, when everybody talks about 5G,
Well, we can do a recommendation to the cities all over the country to get it going, and Gary, maybe they can move it faster. Because this is truly a great process. But why don't we do a very strong letter of recommendation so they can get it done much faster? We're doing that all over the country. You know what?
Shot clocks. The FCC at one time put in place to deploy these kind of cell sites.
Yeah.
Shot clocks. You have 180 days to get a permit done or taking a permit. Something similar is going to need to be done.
Well, we're doing that with highways. It would take sometimes 15 to 20 years to get permits to build a small road or a highway. and we're going to bring it down, try to bring it down to 1 year, maximum 1 year. And you have the same thing. This is much easier.
So
This is really much easier, believe me.
the US is a leader in 4G. We launched 3G. And every country, China, Europe, is basically streamlining the process to get there
So
faster.
this will be going into many other countries. By other companies, by you, by
No, we only operate in the US, and our goal is to basically, we want the US to lead 5G because of the speed, because of the job
You
creation.
will if you can get your permits.
Absolutely.
China has much less trouble getting permits.
Central government.
Great job. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, the folks here promoting the 5G technology are saying that they're having trouble getting permits to install these things because of legislation, certain cities, certain locations, taking much longer to allow these things to take place. And as you saw early on, there are certain communities that don't even want them or are highly skeptical of this sort of technology becoming part of their towns, their neighborhoods, because the way this works, they're going to have a lot more smaller pods instead of one giant tower to get the 5G technology to work effectively. And so the infrastructure is much more invasive. But here's Trump just saying, hey, here's what we can do. Let's write a letter of recommendation. Let's move this forward. Let's push this forward. And keeping that in mind with this idea that he's going to rebuild and create jobs and everything else, I'm just asking you guys to stay level-headed about this. I know there's a lot of Trump supporters. I know there's a lot of Trump haters. And the bottom line is, if you're a Trump supporter, I understand your perspective, but you got to face the facts here and see that he is also part of the system. And he is also building a part of the system that has not been discussed too much by too many people. And also that if you're a Trump hater, it doesn't mean you're necessarily a liberal, okay? There is a massive psychological operation taking place, and that's why I bring up Pedogate and Pizzagate as a possible psychological operation in order to create a solution that benefits the 2030 Sustainable Development UN agenda, which clearly does not have our best interest in mind. It is clearly what Zbigniew Brzezinski wanted in the technocracy. And of course, tie into all that the topic of blockchain, of cryptocurrencies, of the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, virtual realities, augmented realities, all the things that we touch on this channel. Those will be enhanced, they will become faster, they will become more prominent, more invasive. And so what I am proposing is that we all start to, if you haven't already, begin developing skills to be self-sustainable. That is, to live off the land, whether it's to have a small garden in your backyard or have mechanisms to get clean water. Just start moving in that direction if you haven't already, because that's the actual smart thing, not smart cities. And I'm not trying to sit here and be a fearmonger. I'm not trying to say, oh, it's all going to end, fear, fear, fear. Most likely, we are going to be using 5G tech, all right? But there has to be a way for us to get away from it. And if that means moving to an area where this infrastructure is not so invasive, we're going to have to think about that. Everybody has their own personal responsibility when it comes to this, your own personal convictions. So I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do. That's up to you. But it is important to start thinking about this, because by 2020, they want to roll out 5G. And 10 gigs per second upload speed is ridiculous and partly awesome. I get to download a 4K movie in a couple seconds instead of waiting an hour or whatever. But is that really worth it? Is that worth your sovereignty? Is that worth your freedom? Is that worth your privacy? Things to think about.